Have you ever wondered what happens to a castle after the last candle goes out? Not after a battle, not after a fire, but after centuries of complete silence. When the forest quietly decides to take it back. Tonight, allow yourself to relax as we journey into the story of a forgotten stone fortress, hidden beneath towering trees and tangled vines. Whether every detail happened exactly as told is less important than the timeless truth it reflects, that nature, given enough time, outlasts every wall, every crown, and every kingdom. Long ago, deep beyond the familiar roads, stood a lonely castle, built upon a hill of gray stone. It overlooked rivers, fields, and distant mountains. Kings once celebrated within its halls. Queens watched sunsets from its towers. Children laughed through its gardens, and guards kept watch through long winter nights. Then the voices slowly faded. Years became decades. Decades became centuries. Without anger or haste, the surrounding forest began its patient work. Tiny seeds settled into cracked stones. Moss softened the cold walls. Ivy climbed higher every string. Thick roots pressed against ancient foundations, as if the earth itself had quietly decided that the castle belonged to the trees once more. And so begins our peaceful journey into the castle that the forest never forgot.
Long before silence settled over these ancient stones, the castle was alive from sunrise until the stars appeared above its highest tower. Each morning began with the gentle ringing of bronze bells. Bakers filled the cool air with the comforting scent of fresh bread, while blacksmiths shaped glowing iron beside roaring fires. Merchants crossed the great wooden bridge carrying cloth, spices, and stories from distant lands. Every visitor believed the castle would stand forever. The king was known less for conquest than for careful judgment. He preferred long walks through the gardens to grand military parades. The queen spent quiet evenings reading by candlelight, collecting rare books and letters from travelers who had explored the unknown corners of the world. Around them lived hundreds of ordinary people whose names history never recorded. Gardeners cared for roses beneath the stone walls. Stable hands brushed horses before dawn. Young apprentices dreamed of becoming skilled craftsmen, while children chased one another through peaceful courtyards, never imagining that one day the laughter would disappear. As autumn leaves drifted across the castle grounds, life followed its familiar rhythm, calm and predictable. No one could know that the greatest enemy of the castle was not an invading army or a powerful king. It was time itself, moving slowly, quietly, and without mercy.
The first signs of change were so small that almost no one noticed them. One spring, fewer merchants arrived at the castle gates. The old trade road, once busy with wagons and travelers, became strangely quiet. New routes opened across distant valleys, drawing business away from the hilltop fortress. At first, life continued as always. The market still opened every week, the bells still echoed across the valley, and candles still glowed behind the castle windows each evening. But little by little, familiar faces disappeared. Some families left in search of better farmland. Others followed new opportunities in growing towns beyond the mountains. Empty homes remained locked, their windows staring silently toward the castle walls. The king grew older. The queens spent longer hours in the library, reading by the fading light of the fireplace. The once crowded halls became peaceful, almost too peaceful with every passing season. Outside, nature waited with endless patience. Wildflowers appeared between the cracks of the old stone paths. Birds built nests beneath forgotten rooftops. Young oak trees took root beside the outer walls, growing stronger with every passing year. No battle had been fought, no great disaster had struck. Instead, the castle faced an opponent that never hurried and never rested, the slow, gentle passage of time. And the forest, watching from the edge of the hill, continued to move a little closer every season.
As the years passed, almost everyone who had once called the castle home had gone. The royal family had departed generations earlier, leaving behind only empty chambers, faded banners, and memories carried by the wind. The great halls no longer echoed with music or conversation. Instead, they welcomed only the quiet footsteps of one elderly man. He was the castle's final keeper. No one remembered exactly when he had arrived. Some believed he had once served as a young guard. Others thought he had been the son of the royal librarian. By then, such details no longer mattered. His purpose was simple: to care for the forgotten place for as long as he could. Each morning, he unlocked the heavy wooden doors, even though no visitors came. He swept fallen leaves from the stone steps, lit a single lantern in the entrance hall, and walked the silent corridors as if the king and queen might return at any moment. Outside, the forest continued its quiet advance. Vines wrapped themselves around old towers. Thick branches reached across broken walls. Moss covered the ancient stones like a soft green blanket, hiding the scars left by centuries of rain and winter frost. The keeper watched these changes without anger. He understood something few people ever do. Nothing truly belongs to us forever. Even the grandest castle, built by human hands, would one day become part of the living forest once again.
One quiet autumn morning, the old keeper noticed something that had never happened before. A young oak tree had begun to grow inside the castle courtyard. Its slender trunk rose between the worn stone tiles, where generations of soldiers had once marched in polished armor. Tiny green leaves shimmered gently in the cool breeze, untouched by the history that surrounded them. The keeper smiled. He did not pull the tree from the ground. Instead, he fetched a small bucket of water from the ancient well and poured it carefully around its roots. To him, the little tree was not an enemy. It was simply the castle's newest visitor. With every passing season, the forest moved closer. Foxes wandered through the abandoned gardens at dawn. Deer rested beneath the crumbling watchtowers. Owls nested in the highest windows where royal banners had once fluttered in the wind. Even the great hall, once filled with feasts and music, became a quiet shelter for birds during heavy rain. The castle was changing, not through violence or destruction, but through gentle transformation. Stone and wood, once shaped by human hands, slowly blended with roots, moss, and leaves. The boundary between the fortress and the forest faded until it was difficult to tell where one ended and the other began. And in that peaceful silence, it seemed as though nature was not destroying the castle, it was simply welcoming it home.
Winter arrived quietly, covering the forest with a soft blanket of frost. The old keeper moved more slowly than before. Each morning, he climbed the worn spiral staircase with a small lantern in his hand. It had become his daily ritual. Before the sun touched the treetops, he placed the lantern in the highest tower and watched its warm light glow against the cold, gray sky. No travelers were there to see it. No royal family waited below. Yet he lit the lantern every day, believing that some traditions deserved to live, even when no one was watching. As the seasons passed, the keeper's footsteps grew lighter, and his walks became shorter. He spent long evenings beside the old fireplace, listening to the wind drifting through the empty halls. The castle no longer felt lonely to him. It had become peaceful, as if the stones themselves had accepted the passing of time. One spring morning, the lantern in the tower did not appear. The birds sang as they always had. Sunlight slipped through the broken windows. The forest continued to breathe in perfect silence. The keeper was gone. No grand farewell marked his final day. Only the quiet rhythm of nature remained. From that moment on, there was no one left to care for the castle. Only the forest, patient, gentle, and eternal, stood as its silent guardian. Many years passed after the keeper's final lantern faded into memory. The old road leading to the castle slowly disappeared beneath layers of fallen leaves and soft green moss. Bridges weakened, streams changed their course, and young trees grew so tall that they formed a quiet roof above the forgotten path.
Soon, almost no one remembered where the castle had stood. Only a few elderly storytellers still spoke of it during long winter evenings. They told children that somewhere beyond the deep forest, hidden beneath vines and ancient oaks, there slept a castle that had once watched over an entire kingdom. Some listeners believed the stories. Others smiled politely, thinking they were nothing more than gentle legends carried through the generations. But every now and then, a traveler would wander farther than expected. Between the trees, they might catch a brief glimpse of a weathered stone tower rising above the branches. For just a moment, it would seem as though the forest itself were guarding an ancient secret, before the leaves closed once again, hiding the view. No treasure waited inside those quiet walls. No armies stood ready behind the gates. Instead, the castle held something far rarer, a peaceful reminder that even the greatest works of human hands eventually become part of the natural world where silence, patience, and time write the final chapter. Centuries after the castle had vanished beneath the forest, a lone explorer followed an old map that most people believed was meaningless. The faded parchment showed only a winding river, a distant hill, and a small drawing of a forgotten fortress. For days he walked beneath towering trees, listening to bird song and the gentle rustle of leaves. The deeper he traveled, the quieter the world became. Even the wind seemed to move more slowly beneath the ancient branches. Then, through the curtain of ivy, he saw it. A weathered stone archway, still standing after countless seasons. The explorer stepped inside with quiet respect. Sunlight filtered through broken roofs, painting soft patterns across the moss-covered floor. Ferns grew where royal carpets had once been laid. Birds rested upon cracked windows, and small trees reached toward the sky from the heart of the old courtyard. There was no feeling of fear, only peace. It seemed as though the castle had not been abandoned at all. Instead, it had simply found a new purpose, becoming part of the forest that surrounded it. The explorer filled only a few pages of his journal. When he returned home, he shared very little about what he had seen. Some places, he believed, were too beautiful to disturb. And so, the castle remained hidden, protected not by soldiers or stone walls, but by silence, time, and the quiet respect of As dawn slowly touched the treetops, the forgotten castle stood exactly where it had stood for centuries, quiet, patient, and undisturbed. No banners fluttered from its towers. No royal horns announced the arrival of kings. No footsteps echoed through its grand halls. And yet, in its silence, the castle still had one final story to tell. It was not a story about victory or defeat. It was not about treasure hidden beneath the stones or a forgotten crown waiting to be claimed. Instead, It was the story of time itself. Every crack in the walls spoke of countless winters. Every vine climbing the ancient towers marked another passing spring. Every tree growing beside the old foundations reminded the world that nature never conquers through force. It simply waits. Perhaps that is why the castle still feels alive, not because people remain within its walls, but because the forest has become its quiet guardian, protecting its memory with leaves instead of shields, and birdsong instead of trumpets. If you ever imagine walking beneath those ancient trees, pause for a moment before the weathered gate. Listen to the wind moving through the branches. It may sound like nothing at all. Or perhaps it is the castle gently whispering its farewell, grateful that even after all these centuries, someone was willing to stop, listen, and remember. Good night.